everybody. You might have seen a photo of the artworks we just installed at the pyramid. I'm very grateful to be here in Egypt and to install such a work in such a place. And I just want to take you to a tiny bit of journey of what might have taken me through being able today to do this and to be a tiny, a sand part, a tiny grain of sand at the pyramid who will last forever, where this work will just be ephemeral. I started my work in the projects outside Paris, and that's one of my first photos of my friend holding his video camera like a gun. When I took that photo, I was 17 or 18. I had no idea that there was even a job for being an artist. I didn't even know there was a whole world of art and museum and galleries. And of course, at schools, I know that there was museums and stuff, but it was never something that I knew, I could become one day an artist. And so I know I started with that photo, even if I started doing graffiti a bit before when I was 14, 15, because I know that when I took that photo, kind of by accident, I was pasting some photos in the background, and you might see them, there's a repetition of the same image on the background of that photo. I was just pasting small photos at the time. I had never enlarged a big image. And this neighborhood, basically we could do whatever we wanted. The police would not enter much in there, and we were pretty free to do anything. And so when I took those photos that day, and we realized, okay, what should we do with these photos? Why don't we paste them on the building? So find a way of enlarging those photos with a Xerox printer that prints architect plans. When you have plans for a building, it's they use it on a giant photocopy machine, basically. And so I just figured out that if I cut my photo in different files and I put them next to each other, then suddenly it's like a giant puzzle, and I just have to reconstruct it on the wall. And so that's what we did. We went at night, and you see it here, the strips of papers each one next to each other. Well, the thing is, we would just worry that at the time I didn't know how to do it, so I used pole that you use to clean the swimming pools. We went to a big, Home Depot and bought those, installed some cleaning stuff at the end, and we started pasting it. It took us hours and hours of the night, and we asked all our friends from the neighborhood to stay down the ladder so that in case the police would decide to enter, they could not stop us. And so we did this with zero problem, basically overnight. And we were just a large group of people who were there and basically saying, oh, this one is not aligned perfectly, or this one, be careful, it's a bit more to the left. And to me, that's the beginning of my whole journey, because at that moment, a few things happened. First of all, the mayor of that town sued me, but he sued JR, so he couldn't find me. So basically, that's why you see at the time I already had a website which was located in a foreign country. I was very hard to trace, and so when he sued me, I saw the police coming the next day, and they were in the neighborhood trying to get information. And I was like, right, let's see it. And they said, no, we're gonna have to clean this. And there was this and a few other ones on the building. But they didn't, because the neighborhood said, no, this is us represented on the building, so if you touch this, there's gonna be a riot. Well, what happened is they never touched it. But a year later, I don't know if you remember, in France in 2005, we had the largest riot since the French Revolution. It went all over the neighborhoods of France, but it started exactly in front of this photo. Had nothing to do with this photo, it just happened that the two kids that were chased by the police and that hid in an electrical box, that electrical box was right in front. And that neighborhood has already a lot of tension, so the riot started there and then expanded to all the neighborhoods in France. So suddenly I was on the cover of New York Times at 19 years old, but as the background of the riots. I was on every channel around the world, but just as the background. So people start coming in and say, hey, we see your work out there. I was like, oh wow, we did this a year ago, but it's still there. And what happened is an agency contacted me and said, can we meet you? And I never had this kind of deal. They go through the website and I said, okay, you can meet me. And the safest place for me was to meet them there, but the neighborhood was in total lockdown that no one could go in and out. And so I asked the head of the agency to meet me there, which he did. And he said, look, we can't get any journalists in there anymore, and we have to film with long lens and stuff. And I said, yeah, we noticed that. And I said, a lot of my friends have been brought, taking those lens from your photographers and bringing them to me. And when I saw those lens, I was like, what kind of lens are those? They're like really long. I had no idea that you could take a photo from such a distance. All I had was a 28 millimeter. And with a lens like that, you have to do the photo with the trust of the person. So you do it so close from the person that the person is acting in his own image and directing where his image is going to go. So that day, that guy said, if you take photos, we'll pay you, and we'll use them in the press. And I was there with my friend here, and we were like, well, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, we need photos of kids burning cars and breaking everything. And we're like, what do you need? That we have those photos from the project. And he's like, no, we're not interested in those. We're interested in the violence that is happening. And at that moment, and he said, we'll pay you for that. And I never heard of like being paid for a job like this before. But I remember we stepped aside and we said, oh, this sounds a bit strange. And we went back to him and said, no, we're not interested, but if you want those photos, we can sell them to you. And he was like, you kids don't understand, like we're not interested in your photo from last year, we need those photos. And actually that discussion, that moment defined then what I kept on doing the next 20 years, and I'm still doing today. So those were some of the photos. This one is actually still, even if the neighborhood now have been totally demolished after the riots, this building, they haven't turned it down completely because it was not that high. So this photo is still encapsulated in the renovation they did. So in 20, 40, whatever years, they might find it back behind. So I started taking portraits of my friends in there and writing their name at the bottom of the portraits and their building number. So you go from someone in the media, probably with a hoodie that you can't recognize, burning cars, or all those images that you would see around the world, and to someone that you can actually go and knock at his door. It's because all the people that were just living there and walking there and had nothing to do with the riots were still taken within, the stereotype of how we were looking at them. And then I would notice also how the ephemeral part of it, of how the image would stay, and then when the city cleaners would come and clean them, the image would get even more interesting than when it was pasted. So I realized then I never know why I control the image. Remember the first image I showed you? It was more interesting a year later when the riot happened. Because suddenly he was holding his camera like a weapon in a moment where the press was actually making the riots even more intense. And at some point, the president of France said the press is not allowed to give the number of cars burned every day in any neighborhood because this is creating a competition between neighborhoods. And so that's how they actually slowed down the riots at the time. And then when they started destroying the neighborhood and like taking it down, we went inside and I pasted the portraits of my friends that I photographed at the time in 2005. And the more they would hit the building, the more they would find images, and it would keep going. The more layers, the more images. And they've actually kept taking the building down until last September of last year, or a year ago. And this, actually, we did it still years later with no permit, because it's still the same mayor 20 years later, which is crazy. And so, at some point, a couple of years ago, I created a mural where I photographed everyone from the neighborhood, and not making a selection, just asking everybody and letting them be represented how they wanted to be represented. So some people will say, well, I'm just like, walking in the neighborhood, I don't want to be doing something special. Some other ones say, well, I'm a, champion of boxing, I want to be seen like that. Some others say, I want to be seen changing the lamp out there. Some say, I want to be seen complaining about this. Some say, we were part of the riots, we want to be, rioting in the mural. And so in the background, you see the architecture also changing. So I'm just showing you a few parts of it. And in there, actually, is the mayor, is the guy with the three stripes there. I asked him if he wanted to be part of it. And I kind of sent the invite knowing that he would say no. And he said yes. So we gave him, rendezvous in the neighborhood, and he came and I photographed him. And I said, look, sir, there's going to be some people who might turn their back onto you in the mural, because then I recompose everybody one by one. And he was like, no, I understand, I'll participate to it. And the police didn't want to participate. I heard later that they regretted it, but the firemen did, and all kinds of people. The idea was not to show the diversity, but also the complexity of one neighborhood. So what happened with this mural is it was exhibited in the museum in Paris. When that was exhibited, there was an opening where we invited everyone from the neighborhood. And it was the first time that people from second generation immigration like me were represented in the museum. And what happened is the president of France at the time was Hollande, wanted to come. And when he arrived, his security team said he wants to be there at 3 p.m. So he arrived in the museum and there was nobody because the opening was in the evening. When he got there, I showed him the mural and he looked at it and said, wow, this is the history of France, because he said he remembered those riots really well, and he said this is going to stay in the books of history. So he's like, where are the people? I said, well, sir, you know, your security people said you shouldn't be with anybody else, so they're coming later tonight. So he said, no, this is too important, I'm going to cancel my whole day, I want to be there. What he did was very clever. He waited the whole day, people were there in the evening, and when they arrived, they barely saw him. They were all represented there. They were looking for where they were in the mural. And then he said, okay, who's everyone? And people started telling him, well, you know, the guy right there, I'm the brother of one of the 2 kids that died. And during this moment, that's how I felt. That's why I wanted to be represented this way. But also, I tried to calm my people down, because this was not bringing anything than violence. And so every single person started explaining, this is me right there, this is what I'm saying. And then when we came to the mayor, people said, well, you know, he's there, but he never done anything for the neighborhood. And I added that he sued me when I was 18, which I found was funny, 20 years later. And so the president said, whoa, wait, but so Mr. Mayor, why don't you give a wall in the neighborhood for this mural to be there? And if it's permanent, I'll make it a monument there that no one can ever touch it. And so the mayor never had the president come to his town, and which was clever, the president could never get in there anyway. So he gave a wall, and 2 months later we inaugurated the mural. And what was incredible, this was like 3-4 years ago, right before Macron basically. And so when we put the mural there, the people were all there. There was a speech by the president that declared it a national monument, which was nothing for him to do basically, he just had to say it. And then when the mayor came to speak on stage, everybody booed him at the point that we had to come and take the mic and say, hey guys, we're all here, let's hear him, you know, let's hear what you have to say. And so he spoke and he said, I apologize, I agree, I've never done anything for this neighborhood, but I intend to change now. And I've never saw, actually, even some of the elders kind of be like, wow, he acknowledged, he apologized on one thing, we should give him a chance. So a discussion started happening from that day. It was a big lesson for me, because in my head I was like, this guy is my enemy, I don't need to speak with him ever, and I would never see like a bridge being built in any way. And suddenly, and since then, since those years, he did some stuff, and some of the people, he didn't become the best friend of anybody, but he actually changed the perception that everybody had of him. So anyway, over the years, I went on places. This was in the Middle East, when they built the wall in Israel, Palestine, and all those images were pasted most of the time without permission, but it's not the choice of making it without permission, is that in all those places, like here, I couldn't do it with a permission, because it was pasted on the wall on one side and on the other, but it was also pasted in Israeli city and Palestinian city, and so I didn't want it to have, you know, if this project was paid by Coca-Cola, for example, then it would have another point of view, or if it was paid by Meca-Cola, then it had another, you know, point of view. So from the beginning, I self-financed myself through the sales of my artworks, so I became totally independent, all the way to the project at the Pyramid today. So this is an important thing you need to know at each work you look at. It doesn't have any other, you know, pressure from any brand or government whatsoever, and I wanted to protect that all the way. That's the day that the nuns recognized the priest, and so they came and said, "Oh, can we paste him?" You know, those things can only happen in, you know, when you make art and you don't really plan those. This was in Brazil, a project called Women Are Heroes, and I'm going to come back to this a bit later because I have a story to tell you about this one. But each time it's the same process, you see, it's strips of papers, and sometimes, and this was one of the first time, it incorporated an anamorph, which means that it's a thing that you see from only one point of view, just like the project at the pyramids today. So this one here, it looks like it's a flat wall, which is stairs. The stairs are actually, you know, stretched so that, you know, you can go up on them, but you could only see from one point of view and it looked like the wall. In all those places, is, I've always worked with the community. The community is very important, but it appears in different ways. Some ways like this, where we pasted literally with the community and built it with them. This is in Kenya, in Africa, and this is one of the largest slums of West Africa. It's called Kibera. And so I remember when we pasted the faces of those women, people were like, wait, why? You know, what's the point? I'm missing half of the face. And then 2 days later, the train passed. And as the train would go, it never stopped actually. And you notice some people sitting on top of it. It's because if you're outside of the wagon, you don't pay your ticket. And so most of the people are sitting outside, all over windows and stuff. And what the train driver did is just slow down as he passed by. And I'll always remember, because I walk in places like today at the pyramid where people don't necessarily come for your artwork. It's public space. That this person, this is like a school down there, and all the students are sitting there waiting for the train because someone told them. But I'll always remember when I was taking the photos and seeing this happen, this person who was just coming home with a grocery bag who never looked back, and so never saw the train pass. And that's the beauty of walking in open space like this, is some might get it, some might grab it, some might see it, and some might not. And it doesn't matter, then the story gets to be told or not. It's something that you don't control, something that's not in your hand, and from the beginning, that's why some work stays, and now we know that this one is going to stay a month. But this one, it was dismantled right after, because to the people of Kibera, what we use there is corrugated sheets to build the bottom of the faces. And we redistributed it to the whole community so it had a meaning, because there everything had to have a meaning. And so some of it became the door of the school, some of it repaired the school's rooftop, some of it became like some of those women who were in the project house. And everything, constantly people were asking me, you know, how is this going to benefit us? What is the impact of it? And when you do art, you don't necessarily know what is going to be the impact. So at that time I had to really think of, okay, each step need to have a meaning, and they were confronting me on this. And that's when the printer doesn't work that well. You can see the strips, you see. And so I kind of like that image for that, because that's the process we do. You just have to align well the first one, and then you can involve people to do it, because the truth is it's pretty easy. I haven't invented anything, black and white photography or paper or pasting. You just have to apply it, you know, respecting a few rules so you can involve people, and that's when the printer works well. After a while I realized, okay, wait, the walls are not enough, and I should play with the architecture and with the city. So this one is in Brazil, in the water, so it's a structure. And with structure I realized, oh wait, I can actually start playing between mountains, I can build in between space. And you have to see it's like walking in a studio as an artist, but except that your studio is open air. Everything chronologically is kind of my journey, discovering pretty openly, you know, the different steps into my work. And this one was a bit more complicated because it's 80 meters in the air, and so we had to reinforce the building over 5 floors in Brazil, and hope that it wouldn't fall. So sometimes it involved like a team, and I have an amazing team, but also engineers and other people to work with. So the fact to work with people is one of the core things in the, you know, in the projects that I do. Let's see. Oh, this is a small museum we have in France. I don't know if you know about it. They also like had a pyramid, but it's not as old. And I realized when the Louvre, normally you have to be dead to exhibit there. So when they offered me to do something on the pyramid, I literally had zero idea, because you know, I pass in front every day. I don't have an idea for it. So I went by the pyramid and I looked at the people coming from around the world who came to take a photo. And the first thing they did when they arrived in front of the pyramid is they turned their back to it and took a selfie. So I was like, oh, it's interesting. People come from around the world to actually turn their back to the monument. So I basically made the monument disappear. So from one angle, the pyramid was gone. And so what you're seeing is the building behind. And then when they invited me for the second time, I was like, oh shit, I have no idea what to do. So I make the pyramid appear. So this time, the pyramid is only in the middle here, and the rest is paper. And right here, you see the size of a human. So this was one of the largest pasting we did. This was just before COVID. And we had 400 people a day. And we had to do it like a puzzle, so that to install it perfectly over 1 week. And after that, we let it open that anyone could walk on it. But the more you would walk on it, the more it would disappear under your feet. So it was very interesting to see the reactions of the people who were like, oh wait, this should be protected, or some others say, oh wait, I want a piece of that, I want to sell it. Some others say, oh, this should be recycled, let me put it in the garbage. Everyone had their own perception of it. And that's also why I don't necessarily add too much explication behind it, because I'm more curious about your interpretation, depending on your own story, depending on your own frame of reference, than mine. And so walking around there, I always remember people who were like in excitement and kids tearing down everything, and some others trying to like take a photo before it's all gone. And after 2-3 days, it was all gone. But during those 2-3 days, the artworks were literally flying in between those buildings. And it was something magical to see. And I'll always remember one woman who asked me, but aren't you sad as the artist that your work is all being destroyed like this? And I said, well, everyone's in there is dead and I'm alive. Have you ever seen a work alive in a museum like the Louvre? And I can see that, and everyone can take a piece of it. And so it's just a matter of perception, and my whole work is about that. It's how to change the perspective we have about a place, about a community, and even, about a museum. I never know where to point. But this was recent at the Eiffel Tower, just before the summer actually. It's on the same base, same thing as an anamorph. That's why I'm showing you a few ones before we go. This was during the COVID, where all the museums were closed. So this is in Italy. It was a way to show the inside of the museums while every museums around the world were closed. So it was interesting to be able to walk with the monuments like that and as in public space. This one's in Rome. If anyone goes in Rome for the next year, it's there. And I guess we're back in time. Man. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. I don't know if I'm going to tell you how the wall gets to be done. This is the wall between Mexico and US. What you're seeing here is US. What you're seeing where the houses are on the other side is Mexico. So this is the way I process the wall. People tell me, you should do something on the wall, you should do something on the wall. But to me, this wall, I can paste on it because it's a see-through wall. So as a wallpaper man, I can't do something on a see-through wall. I can only do it when it's flat or maybe get detailed. But after a while, I was like, oh, maybe I could build a structure like the one I showed you in the museum. So we went there, we scanned it with my team, and as we drove here on the US side, we realized, oh, there's a nice road here that people could drive to. And on the other side, there's houses and space. We should go look. It's in Tecate. So it's in 2 hours drive from San Diego, and it's not far from Tijuana. So we passed the border. Remember, because I'm at the JR, when I pass the border, I take off my hat and glasses, and that's why I'm anonymous. So I pass the border, and I enter as a regular tourist in Mexico. And of course, my first instinct was like, let me find a space where we do it. And this house was the closest from the wall. So I just went there, and I arrived at the door. There's a few dogs and chickens running around, and there's a little baby in his crib, the grandparents, and the mother comes out and say, "Can I help you, sir?" And I said, "Yes. Can I speak to you for a minute? I'm an artist." I say, "Oh yeah, I know you. I follow you on Instagram." I'm not sure you're talking about the same person, but and she said, "No, I'm pretty sure." And I remember the connection was bad, so we went online, and I asked her about Wi-Fi, and we went, and she's like, "Oh no, it's you. I know your work." I said, "Okay, well that sounds good because actually I'm looking for a place to do it." She said, "You can build it on my house if you want. You can build it in my garden." So I went in the back and I looked, and you can see it's pretty far off. I thought it was closer, but it's pretty far off. So I was like, "Thank you so much. Look, it's my first time here, and I'm going to go all along the coast." And so I left, and I said bye to the grandparents, the baby, the dogs, the chicken, and we started driving. And on the way, I was like, wait. That whole time, there was a baby in the crib, who was probably 1 year old. And he was just looking at me, going right and left. And how does he see the fence? Because he sees it from his, the garden there. What is a fence for 1 year old? Is that a separation? What is it for him? So I came back and I said, "I'm sorry, did you forget something?" And I was like, "No, can I take a photo of your kid right here, like he is now? And if I end up using it, I'll come back to you." So all I did was photographing the baby who was standing in his crib and looked right, left, and at me. And then we left. And then I was like, wait. I asked her before I left, who is that land that you see right here? Who is this land there? And she said, well, I don't know, we live here forever, but I don't know whose land it is. So I go to the neighbor and I say, sorry, excuse me to disturb. Is that yours? Is this your land? No, I close the door, okay? I go to the next one, same. Some would not open the door, some would say, no, I have nothing to do with this. Some were like, afraid. Kept the whole thing. I was like, all right, it's nobody's land. So there's a good thing you should know about. If you rent a Caterpillar, they'll deliver it wherever you want, because they just rent it to you. So this is a tip I'm giving you. You rent a Caterpillar, and you can start digging the ground anywhere, because they just deliver it where you want them to deliver it. So I started digging the ground by the border. The thing is, and you can read this on the internet, they say that the border is not technically where the border is. That maybe it's still the US for couple feet, couple meter on that side. In Mexico, this way, if the US have to enter in Mexico, they don't have to ask permission over a certain limits, but I couldn't have that exact limit. So I started digging anyway, and I'm like, if someone comes and says, sir, you're not allowed to do this, I'll apologize and I'll put the sand back where it was. But 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 20 days, we digged, we leveled the whole ground. No one said anything. Helicopters every 5 minutes, border patrol cars on the other side every minute. No one said anything. So the second tip I can give you, you go to a company that rents scaffolding. If I wanted to build a scaffolding here outside of this university, I would just go and say, we're starting a construction here, I need you to install it by tomorrow 4 a.m. They would start the construction. Like, that's how they do in most of places in the world. They would think that you have the permission. So I said, we need to build a scaffolding here on the other side. And we started building. And I'm like, okay, why not be, bigger than the wall? Maybe they'll say something because we're entering the airspace, This is 3 times the size of the wall. No one said anything. So I was like, all right, it's interesting. So I went back to see the woman and I said, look, remember the photo I took of your kid? Would you agree that I pasted it here? It might get some attention, I will around you, so I would understand if you don't want and I would photograph someone else. I said, no, trust me, do it. And I think it's a strong message and I want my son to be on it. And one day, later, in a couple of years, I'll explain in the whole project. So we started pasting. And the pasting is not the hardest part. We just paste, and then we cut out, on this one, we cut out the wood around it. So that when you look from the other side, that's what you see. So, in here, I went back and passed on the other side. And there was already border patrol observing it. At that moment, we were still finishing. You can see the scaffolding here. So I took a photo, and I just posted it and say, work in progress. I wanted to tell the story of the kid, I wanted to explain. But in the next minute, this photo was all over the internet, and I had already left, flying back to New York, because I didn't want to stay around here if suddenly we had to pay fines. So I just said, this is the location where you can come and see. It's legal for you to come and see it. So I gave a pinpoint, and you could drive your car here on the other side. You could, drive and walk by. And so what happened is that the next day, people would come and start taking photos, and same on the other side, and people would come and take selfies, and and then something I didn't plan is that people would see each other doing the exact same things through the wall. So they would say, hey, do you mind taking a photo of my family? And I'll take a photo of yours, and taking their phone. When I started saying those, I got very scared, because I'm like, wow, people could get in trouble and arrested, and suddenly it's going to be a whole different meaning. To do this, you're going to have to arrest and deport every single person, and we'll break visas, and we'll deport whoever's not legal, because you can't interfere with the cars and the border patrols that are passing there every day. So what we did is very simple. We started building the table only on the Mexican side. And so we built it in wood, and we adapted it to the wall, and we even made the pillars of the wall go through it, but we stopped right there on the Mexican side. And then just on social media, we said, hey, it's the last day to see the piece of the kid. It's tomorrow. If you want to come and watch it, because we're going to dismantle it. And so people started coming on the US side, and we waited until there was 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people, not more. We said, wait, can you just wait? We're going to pass you something. And through the wall, we gave them a tarp in vinyl, and they hold it like this, And then we said, okay, let's send the drone up And that's what you see from up there. So what you see here is actually the exact continuation of the table, and the eyes you're looking here is a woman who came, which she's called a dreamer, the people who are born in Mexico but came when they were very little, so all they have known is the US. And there's 11 million of those in the US, undocumented, people who came in as a kid, and so she was one of them, and that day she decided to come. But she decided to come even with her mother that day. And so, can you see the band on the top? You see the shadows of the band? It was a band from Mexico, there was 10 of them. I could only fit 5 here, and some others had the right to go on the US side, so I put them on the US side. So the other half is here, but they were playing the same music because the wall is see-through. Then we made a meal, but there was more food on the Mexican side, so we passed illegal tacos through the wall so that people could eat here. And then I was like, let's eat quick, so we get a photo. I thought this was not possible, we had to like fake the photo. So I was like, let's just pretend we're eating. Everybody's sitting down, just pass the salt, send the water. But after 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour and a half, we were still there. And I was like, oh wow, those guys on the end decided to let it go. So no cars passing, not one. At some point, there's a car who arrived here, and the guy came out, and I say, oh, send him over to me because I don't want everybody to get in trouble. And I was on the safe side, I was in Mexico. So I looked to the wall and I said, sir, you mind coming to me? And the guy came, and at this time we exchanged a tea. We have the video here, but it's not working, but you can see it, it's on my Instagram. When you go back later, you'll see it. It's just a minute video where he accepted to have tea, but he also accepted to share like the video online after that. Because you see his badge. I was like, sir, you're gonna be in trouble if I share that video. And he's like, no, you know, you gotta understand that there's people in my position who don't necessarily believe like the people that are ruling this country. And so at my level, what I could do in my voice today was like to just decide not to interfere. So I just came to say, maybe an hour and a half is enough, but if you want to stay longer, we won't arrest anybody. So after 2-3 hours, we just left. Oh, it works actually, wait. So, it was Chinese tea. It's okay for the sound, only the sound. And then he was afraid it was not tea. So that's what he said, basically. But I'm still in touch with this guy now. He retired, and this is one of the things that he's the most proud to have done, even if he had a lot of backfire from it from his, other guards who don't believe in the same way he believes. But it's one of the most amazing memory we shared, and so we often in touch. And he sent me, it was interesting, he sent me a piece of the wall as a sign of like, thank you, and like engraved and say, thank you for what you did for the wall, which is very strange, to have like a piece of the wall that divides people as a thing to hold on your wall. I never know what to do with it, but it's touching. And talking about walls, a friend of mine called me 2 years and a half ago, same thing, right before COVID. And he said, oh, JR, I'd love for you to come and do something in a prison. Like, oh yeah, I know a lot about prison, but I know it's too complicated. We're not really good, we're a small team. We can't do paperwork all day to apply to do something in a prison. And he said, no, but what would you do if you were doing something? And when it's a close friend, you can't hang up on him. He's just like, I don't know what I would do, but I'm telling you, I'm not going to do it because it's too complicated and I don't want to go through this. No, but it would make so much sense. The system in the US is so crazy. So at some point, I had a really busy day that day. I said, hey, look, you see what I've done at the Louvre, pasting the whole thing at the Louvre? I would do that in the prison. It's like, oh, that's an amazing idea. All right, let me hang up. And I was like, I'm sure I'm not going to hear from him for years. He hung up, and then he called another guy who works with prison. He said, yeah, I spoke to JR, he's down, he's okay to do something in a prison. Oh, that's amazing. What do you want to do? You want to paste an entire prison? Okay, great, let me call the governor. The guy called the governor of California. The governor said, wait, what? This French artist called JR, I don't know about it. No, he wants to paste black and white images. He's like, wait, before I was a governor once, I was in a mural, just like the one I showed you with thousands of people. And I done one in San Francisco, and he was there, but I didn't know. And he was one of the person in the mural, and he remembered because on those murals you can click on any single person and hear the story. So he remembered the process of being photographed in the streets, of being in the bureau, and having his story recorded. So he said, yeah, she's the same artist. Give him full clearance for all the prisons in California. So that's, and he calls back my friend said, wait, really? Okay, I call back Jerry, he calls me back. Shit, I thought I would not hear from him for years. I said, you get full clearance, any prison, anything you want. I was like, yeah, right, yeah, it's great, sounds great. I didn't believe a word. So I said, look, what I need is like a prison where the ground is in concrete. I can't have grass, I can't have sand, and it's concrete. I was like, I don't know anything. I was like, let's look on Google Earth, I'm not gonna travel there for now. I wanna know if that's possible. So we looked, and we find a place like this. This is called Tehachapi. So we sent him a photo to that guy who called the governor, and he said, this one, it's a maximum security prison. It's a super max 4. It doesn't get higher. I was like, well, you told me I have clearance, I don't understand. No, okay, we can do it. It's just you have to understand how it works there. It's a whole other world. So he said, well, where can you go? I was like, well, but I have no paper, I have nothing. He's like, no, you don't need any papers. I was like, okay, so it's fair. I'm gonna send 2 of my guys who are in LA. They're gonna come tomorrow, and they're gonna check if that's, if it's real. So the next day, as I called friends, I said, can you go and see? And then, cover all your costs to go there for 1 day, and just take your camera, your drone, everything. And they said, wait, but we don't have a permit. I said, no, I just gave your name. They said, we're gonna drive 3 hours in the desert and give our name. And I said, that's what they said. No news from them. 24 hours later, they called me from the road, and they said, yeah, it was insane. We entered there, there's no guard, it's the army who's there. The army, and they're only on on the watchtowers, and it's like, a world you don't even know that exists. And they say, we live in Los Angeles, we didn't even know that was real. And I said, so what happened? I said, they say, can we go to the roof? And they just say, yeah, but there's electric cable. And they say, yeah, but we need to go to the roof. Okay, we turn on the electric cables, and they went into photos. And they say, can we go here and there? And all the time the guys are like, yeah, sure, let's go there. Let's empty the yard. Let's make them go here. Can we fly our drone? They say, sure, fly your drone. But the drone wouldn't go because they have geofencing. But still, they say anything with us, they say yes. So they send me this photo, which is actually that exact day of the drone flying from outside the prison. And because it couldn't go closer. And I say, wow, this playground here would be perfect. So the next day, we flew there. And they gathered a group of inmates, and I brought some cameras, and we started to document the process. The thing is, I was there in the middle of different gangs, and guys with had skinheads, swastikas, guys from different Latino gangs, or all a mix. And when I arrived, it was pretty hostile, but the guards told me, you can't touch them, you can't approach them, you can only go and just sit and talk, and we'll be there to go out there. I was like, that's fucked up. I just came and I shook everybody's hand. And then I sat, and then we started talking, and the truth is, they were like, okay, well, who are you, what are you doing? And it's always the same process I go through. People are like, what is this going to achieve for us? What is the purpose of what you're doing? And when you're doing art, you can't say, well, the purpose is this, and this is what it's going to achieve, and this is where we're going to go. It's just you start something, and you see what's going to happen, and you build on that. So I try to explain them that. I say, look, I show them what I did at the border, and I explain, I say, this image went around the world and show that maybe the walls are not exactly where we think they are, and some people think differently. And I say, maybe in a place like this, they say, oh, no, here the walls are really where we think they are. I say, we can't go anywhere. I was like, I know, but still, when in your life you have the chance to actually share your story, to actually send a bottle in the ocean, and maybe someone will hear you. So I said, I thought of an idea, but I don't know if it's right, so you have to tell me. And they said, what is it? I said, you see this big thing? We could make it like a giant hole, and you'd all be in it, but there will also be victims, and there will also be guards. And the guards who were around say, no, we're not participating in this. Those guys are animals, and we're not participating in any of this. So then I started the photos of each one of them, one by one. And I took them aside, photographed them, and then I say, you go in this room over there, you'll be by yourself, there'll be a microphone. When you sit, you have to record your story. But remember, there's a guy like me from France who don't know any of this. I don't know how the prison system works. I don't know what took you from doing what you were doing when you were 13, 14, because all the people I had here were taken in jail when I was minor, when I was under 21. And at the time also, there was a law in California that was a 3 strike. You do 3 minor mistakes, then you take life forever with no parole. And so a lot of them haven't killed anybody, they were just taking that system. But I still said at the table, I said, any of you, by being in this project, might offend someone on the outside because you rape someone, you kill someone. I would advise you to leave this table or to not be part of this project because this might drive too much attention and might hurt your victims. And only 6 or 7 of them stand and left the room. And the others say, no, we have nothing, we have no victims outside that would be mad at us, or it was gang related, and so they all stayed. And I said, okay, when you go in that room, you tell your whole story as you want. No one's going to push. If you want to record it in 20 seconds, record it in 20 seconds. But if you want to tell it for an hour and a half, you have an hour and a half. And so each of them went. At the end of the day, we managed to get a couple of guards, and then we went in the outside and recorded some victims. And then we started explaining the process. We came back there. And what was crazy is during all that time, I was allowed my phone in the prison. And normally you're not allowed a phone. When you go in, even as a visitor, they take everything from you. And I realized that I had the big cameras, but the strongest elements that I had with me were the phone. And I could share anything on social media live, basically. I could just take my phone and share, and people could respond to it, like anything you post on social media. But I could show it to the inmates and say, hey, you see that person? She said a little house, she said a little this. And I started realizing the power of it. So during all this time, I would explain them how we would do the pasting, but I would also share the process of pasting each single strip. And the thing is that some people would notice in the pasting that there was people who had like external signs, like, I don't know, I'll show you one that's pretty obvious. So we came with the whole team. We had to recount every brush and every stick, every hour or every 2 hours. I forgot they came, and if we missed one single piece, one single squeegee or brush or anything, they would shut down the whole project. And even if a fight would happen on any other yard, everyone had to go on the floor, so that it's like the rule. That's the way they operate these kind of prisons. It was very strange because you're pasting, there's an amazing energy, and suddenly the alarm goes off, everybody's on the floor. And like 5 minutes later, everybody's back to it like if nothing happened. It was very strange to walk in this process. And so at some point we managed to get the guards to paste, which was really hard because the one thing I hadn't planned once we had the authorization to paste is the wall, that was not the wall of the prison, was the wall between the guards and the inmates. That wall was bigger than any. They said it in their audio. They said, for us, those guys are animals. We don't see them as humans. And, they recorded it like normal, like it was not a scoop for them. That's just how they process it. So when I came and I asked if anyone would paste, they were like, it's a strict no. But at some point, because we stopped the whole pasting and said, wait, I don't want to continue until we have one guard that actually do it for the image. But then I had the second one and the third one. And I realized what it meant for them, because being in this minute constantly for years and years and years, suddenly to be just for a second reconsidered like a human was insane, because in there you don't get a second chance. And it was very interesting to understand the process there, where the head of the jail came to see me and he said, look, I've been running this jail since 30 years. Basically we threw the key out and we're like, let's just close ourselves to the world. And he said, you got this permission to do whatever. I said, let's try. So I would share a lot on social media, and this guy, of course, kept people's attention with his swastika on his face. So at some point I went to see him and I said, what's up with that? And he said, I did this when I entered really young, and I got in the gangs, and it was a way for me to exist and shock others and be part of the gang. So I did this, and now I kind of forgot about it because I left the gang, but I'm still in there and I can't remove it. And I was like, wait, so if I post a photo on this thing called social media and I say you want to remove it, is that true? He's like, oh no, yeah, of course. So I posted it, and then a lot of people started replying and say, whoa, we can see in his eyes that he seems like a good person, but he have a sign on his face that indicate the contrary. And he said, are you doing apology of this and that? But I have to say, it was 80% of positive messages and 20% of people who were like, this is not right. So I went back to him and I said, look, I showed him the messages and I said, you have to understand. Some people don't understand this. So do you mind if we record a video where you're going to explain with your own words? And you can see all those. If you go on my Instagram there, I kept all those stories live, in the highlight, whatever. And he explained with his own words, and I kept on doing it for all the days we were there. And every day he had to re-explain it a bit clearer. And it was very interesting because by the end we had thousands of people ready to pay for the removal of his tattoo. And it became such a thing on social media that the head of the prison heard about it, and we were trying to get a laser to remove it in there. And at that time, we said, wait, there's actually a program that our prison was not part of, but they're starting tattoo removal in prison. And now we're going to be the #1 prison in the country to get it, and he's going to be the first person to get tattoo removal. So it was very interesting to see this happening just because of how people observe them from the outside. We also, I don't know if you know, there's a book called Mouse. It's a book done by Art Spiegelman that tells about the Holocaust. And we brought in that book signed by the author, and he read it. And the next day, he said, I talked to my mother, and I said, I read this book, it's about the story. And she's like, you're a fucking moron. Like, your grandfather died in the camp because he was hiding Jews in Poland, and you go in this fucking prison and put this on your face. And so it was very interesting because even to them, they had no idea of their past, of their own history. So we kept on pasting, and even what you see, the guy in black here is the head of the prison. They would never get, this is not possible in a prison to put your hand above each other. They have all these rules. Some of them haven't had human contact for 18 years. They go in the shoe, it's like a cage. I saw this in movies, but I really thought it didn't exist. And then when it was ready, this is basically what you would see. From above, you see here the guy standing. This is the same photo from before, but if I zoom, that's what you're seeing. It's like basically the whole culture, and when you click on any single person, you hear their story. And so I released this with an app that is free. It's called JR Murals, and you can go in any of those murals and you can click on any person. And when you go in those, you hear whatever they recorded that time, or whatever the victims have recorded, or the guards. What happened is that I didn't saw them for 2 months. I came back and I asked them, so, we released this thing, how was the impact for you? And they said, you don't know. Like, first it went viral through all the prisons and people were talking about it, but I said the most important thing, how it affected us directly, is that some of our kids had never spoken to us in 18 years, and now they come and visit us every week. We had never a chance to tell them our own story, because you can't do that in front of in the visitor center with everybody over. And in this audio, a lot of them, if you hear, cry and start like going deep into their story. So they reconnected with their family. What happened also is the prison realized that some of those guys don't need to be there. So out of this whole group, basically 2 months after, 1/3 of them had been moved to a lower security. By 2 months after, there was all in cell level 3 or level 2. And then, thank you. Yeah. And by now, which is a year later, all of them are gone from this. And some have been released, and the one with the swastika, I'm going to go to see him in the prison in exactly 3 weeks from now, and I'm going to walk out with him on the 15th of November. They could not remove his tattoo because of COVID, and so that had slowed down the whole process. So we're going to have to actually drive together to find a tattoo removal place and to remove it over a couple of days. So he's very scared not to go out, first of all, because he hasn't been out in so long, but also to, do this process and to be outside, where he said he only realized how this would hurt people when he saw my team come in and all of us being shocked, but some more than others, and he then realized basically that how it was offending people. That's when we came back. We didn't want it to come for nothing, so we pasted the montage that's behind on the wall, so that basically there's no walls. But we couldn't do it all the way to the bottom because the guards, remember there's no guards in the yard, they only operate from the watchtower. So if anything happened, they don't go and separate, they shoot at them. So basically they say we need to always have a clear vision when we shoot, so we can't have your pasting go all the way down. So we installed this one here, and you see it a bit better there. And during winter, when the mountain behind is all white, it basically looks like there's no walls. I've hidden a helicopter in there and a buggy in the image, in the black and white image, but they all know where it is. So in their mind, if they escape in their mind, they know that there's a helicopter waiting for them in the hills. So let me go back to this. This is in Brazil. This was 2008. That's the last story I'm telling you. This, when we did this, it's one of the most violent favelas in Brazil. And at the time, you know, it's a project called Women Are Heroes. Long story short, we managed to paste the whole here. But after we finished this, 25 days after, the people said, well, why don't you build a school here? I was like, well, I've never been to school. You want me to build a school? I was 24. I was like, you know, it makes no sense. They said, no, there's a house at the top of the hill there that no one wants because it always gets the bullets from the shoots between the drug dealers and the police. Why don't you buy it? And then we make a school. And I said, no, you know, it's not, I wouldn't know how to run this, and I go back to France. Anyway, I went back to France and they kept writing me and they said, look, you know, there's no NGO here, there's no schools. It would be an amazing project. I said, yeah, but I don't know what to do in there. And they said, look, doesn't matter, let's get the house and then we'll see. So I flew back and we got the house. And when we got the house, we decided to just take the house and paint it yellow because there was a discount on the yellow paint that day at the train station nearby. We bought all the yellow paint, we just gave it to the kids and we just blasted the house in yellow. Then we paid a little plate, you know, for 20 euro, like it would say this house is donated, you know, after the project Women Are Heroes to the community, and it's a cultural center, anyone can come. That's it. There was no chairs, tables, door, nothing. So the first day we started, you know, doing like pastings, and the kids would take photos and stuff, and we did an opening. And at that opening, everyone from the community came. And over the years, these chairs started to come, and some computers. You know, like we have 3 computers. We realized with not much we could do a lot. And what was important is that we get people in. So the way it looks inside, it's, you know, this is the outside. I come back to that. This is the inside. It's all hand built. And all the kids from the community and teachers from there or that lives in Rio comes. And the drug dealers, because it's a very close community, let us operate in there with no deals with them. We don't pay them or anything. The thing is, here's a video, but I don't know if it will work. Let's see. Maybe not. But you'll see it on also on the side. It's just the camera goes in and inside is a classical dance happening. But my struggle there was to bring people to come and give class there because of the complexity of that community. And so what we did is we kept on going for all those years, and slowly we, you know, people all understood what the school was. And it was maybe 8 years or 9 years later, someone told me, oh, the head of the drug dealer is different. So I was like, oh, what does that mean? He said, well, he's a bit crazy. Maybe he just walked and said, that's my house, and you have to give it to him. I was like, oh, shit. Well, how do we make this house that he don't want to take it? So that's why we actually installed wood and trees coming all the way out of the house and eating the whole house. So we built this over 6 months with some Japanese artists and some American artists, and they came and locals. And we built this, and all the drug dealers were looking at it like, well, you know, it doesn't make sense. All the houses look the same here, and this one has a tree coming in and out. And so it stayed there, and it kept them away for a little bit. And I was like, oh, you know what? We're actually in the center of town, like literally the center of the city of Rio. And the police of the states can't come in. So we do whatever we want. So we the highest house on the top. And no one, you know, can say, you just have to ask your neighbor. And I went to my neighbor and I said, hey, excuse me, can I ask you a question? Who owns the sky? Who owns if I build something in the sky, do you have a problem with that? No, I don't care, as long as, you don't break my house or anything. I went to the other neighbor, I said, do you mind if I use the sky? He's like, no, I don't care. So at some point, I'm like, oh, okay, it sounds okay. I want to build the moon in the sky. And at the time, we're like, okay, it's just, I made a drawing. I'm like, just build the moon. That would be a bedroom that people would want to go and sit there. And if they go and sit there, then they have to give a class to the kids. And at that time, Helen and Pharrell Williams, who would, like in the US, had said, oh, we'd love to have some works of yours in our home. And I was like, oh, you know what? Let's do this. I don't want to take any money from you. Why don't you make a donation to this school in Brazil right now? And I'll make any artworks you want for your house, but we need this amount of money right now. They said, okay, sure, that's okay. I mentioned the moon, but they didn't even realize what it was, and I didn't even know what it would become. So suddenly we had the money in Brazil, we find an engineer, we said, look, we want to build this moon. And they said, well, what is it? We say, we want to build a moon that's like, 14 meters in the sky, and it would be above this house. And he said, okay, like I'm 65, I've done everything in my life, I'm not scared of those drug dealers, if I die there, I die there, but he's like, you need to be very, organized to do this. And this moon, I know this community needs to be bulletproof, because I wouldn't want any of those kids to get a bullet up there. And I said, okay, whatever it takes. So he made us a budget where everything was in bulletproof, there was 50 men, we could not bring any scaffolding or any cranes. It had to be all handheld and tiny little platforms to build it. And we started the construction. And next one, yeah, there's some lunch there. Okay, we started the construction. And the more we would build, you see, in the sky, we did it all in heavy metal. So we had to carry everything by hand, and it took weeks and weeks. And we started appearing in the sky of Rio. What was interesting is that, no one would come and say anything, even if there's helicopters flying and stuff. I decided to put a little light for it at the top there. But then when we finished and when it was ready, basically the city didn't come and complain whatsoever. So he built it in a way that the two pillars go all the way through the house. So if you go and look at any floor of the house, you have a pillar going through. And sometimes it's literally, next to the bed or in the middle of the kitchen. We couldn't control that. But at least he told me that this moon would last longer than the actual house. So we'll see. In there, inside it, it's a bedroom. I'll show you from the side. It's a bedroom like that. And so we started putting those, and artists from around the world send artworks. And I don't know if this video will work. If not, same thing, they're all on the site. But you see a 360-degree view of the place you understand. Oh, it works actually. Of the whole, of Rio. This is all Rio de Janeiro. And so what happened after that, because that favela is not pacified, is we started having artists from around the world. We say, hey, how can I go in this moon? How can I take a photo in this moon? And we say, well, you can come. You're welcome to come. You just have to teach those kids something. And so since then, it's been 3-4 years now that the moon is up there. We had, hundreds of artists coming, and the school started booming because of the existence of this moon. And for the 10 years anniversary, we decided something crazy. We said, on the little square here of the church, we said, let's do a concert. And maybe Pharrell would come and perform there. And so this was 19, and he came, and it was an incredible day because the whole community was there. There was literally, it leaked online, but no one from the city was brave enough to go up the hill, so we had only the community. And it kind of put that little school on the map like never. And since then, even during COVID, even during this, we kept an energy that's ongoing, even with no public fund or whatsoever. It shows that the power of the community. So because he's here today, and Rocket, whose birthday it is, so happy birthday. And they were all together there at the time, and Rocket, you actually met those kids and played with them. But it's a human chain, and all the way, and the power as artists but as community is way stronger than we even know. And so even when an idea is that to build the moon in the sky, and that would actually cost more than the whole budget of the school, the power of dreaming is stronger and is more powerful than any other power. And that's really was the living proof in there of this project. So thank you again. That's it for today. Thank you all for listening to the stories, for having me in Egypt. And three or four questions if you want. And yes, sir.
Tell us about your product.
In here?
Yeah.
Yes. Let me see if I thought that we had the image there, but maybe we have disappeared from the slides. But look, I was very intimidated by the pyramid because I didn't realize the power of it until I came and saw it. It's not the same thing to study something in a history book and suddenly being in front of it. And because I was not very focused in school, I might have missed those days when they really explained my course. I think I was maybe in the bathroom that day, I was not at school, I was homesick. So I really came here so naive that I imagined like telling the story to a child for the first time. That's what it did to me. So there's nothing I can do by the pyramid that can, have a stand next to this incredible, art is about questioning. It doesn't give answer. We raise questions. When they raised something 4,500 years ago that we're still questioning about it. And that's fascinating. So the only thing I could do was an ephemeral piece that gives you another perspective on it just for a second, a minute, a month, that you'll always know that there's even more to the possible than there is. But usually I do this on places where there's not really more possible, or very a little bit, where here we know that there's so much more possible that we haven't even realized the full depths of what they have created at the time. So this artwork is this very simple and modest installation, but that allows you to suddenly see the top of the pyramid floats. And depending on the time of the day, you'll have a much better lighting, and it will actually look, if the sky is white, then it will look like it's totally, gone and it's really floating. But if the sky is blue, then you will notice the image. So it depends on the hours and the time. And but what's interesting also, like all the other places I showed you, is that people don't come there to see this piece, they come there to see the pyramid. And same thing, if you go there and notice, you realize that people sometimes walk by it and don't notice it because they came here to see the pyramid. But some does and take the photo with the wrong angle. And then some will come and stay. That's all the steps that it takes to actually get someone's attention. And so I'm very curious because we just installed it. It just was the first public day yesterday, and now it's open for 1 month. So I'm just very curious of all the photos that are going to be taken and all the creativity from people that's going to come around that. And I'm very grateful to be here, to be honest, and travel through this beautiful country that I'm discovering every day a bit more. One last and then we go.
Obviously you shared all the successes, but have you ever been commissioned or done an installation and completely flopped?
What are my biggest failure? Well, every project I start have more risk of failure than success. You have to know that. I've been arrested a countless amount of time. I have police record in more countries than you'll ever know. It's part of it, but to me, all I do is paper and glue. So I always go and I say, well, if that's supposed to happen, that's going to happen. I'm going to take every step possible to not get arrested, but it happens. So in lots of places we go and, it doesn't happen like we're supposed to. Not in projects like here where I'm invited by an art organization to install a piece, but in places like at the border of Mexico or in Turkey, and in places where I didn't ask any permission. Yes, I had a lot of problems, but we had to often start something and stop it. We had to dismount it. We had to, sometimes pay fines, even if it's really rare, because we mount these crazy things so that we don't pay fines, and that often gets the city crazy. The city of Istanbul tried to put me so many fines, but through the people that I rented the scaffolding, and we did it under fake names. And it was this whole thing until the police came and painted my artworks in blue. And I was in France and I posted something and I said, this is before and this is after they painted it. It went so viral that the city contacted us and said, wait, can you come and repaste it? And we want this back. And then I said, yeah, sure, I'm gonna ship it and you guys are gonna paste it. And I said, no, we want you to paste it, and then the mayor wants to meet you and shake your hand. I was like, no, there's none of that. So I shipped them, they never repasted it, but they took off all the fines. The interesting thing is like a dialogue. I walk in the gray zone, So when you walk in the gray zone, it's like It's not totally illegal, no one's gonna die about it, but it's not fully legal, and then it will depend on a few people on the way to just close their eyes and say, okay, let it happen. So, and this is the most important and interesting zone for me to work in, because there's more chance of failure than success, but if it works, it will show that there is a bright side of lights at places you don't even expect. And so for this, you have to be ready to fail. So I always start a project knowing this, but I'm lucky to have an amazing team, and some of them are here more than Camille. And you know, they have this project. But we always have that in mind, you know, and we'll do everything we can so it happens, but we're also ready to fail, because that also tells us, it's almost like a sociological experiment, and you'd be surprised by the generosity and the openness of people that it raises in certain moments. When it's, I always make my project in the most emergency possible, and I don't plan it in the next 2 or 3 years, because that's pretentious to say I'll do this in 3 years. I don't know where I'll be in 3 years. I'll do it tomorrow. I know where I'll be today, and so that's how we approach every project. And yes, you know, when I started in the prison, we opened a school there in the prison I showed you. But the day we were about to do the first class and everything was up, they found weapons somewhere else in the jail. They had to cancel the whole thing. Sometimes it's a few things remind you how long and hard is the journey, but the journey is way more amazing than where it's actually taking you. So now that I have a bit more years to realize that, I take every second of that journey carefully and enjoy it, because I know that it's not necessarily the moment where the pyramid, where I done there, it's done, but it's the way to do it. And what we're studying today about the pyramids of 4,500 years ago is not the actual structure, it's how they did it, what did they left behind. This is their journey to do it. It's the thing that is, to me at least, it's the most fascinating thing ever. So that's, you know, the way we approach things. Thank you all for being here. Many others here, they really are the ones who are making it possible, and so big thank you, because